your Android device using Magisk is to gain access. In the previous video, we learned how to set up specific release or build versions of Android for your Pixel device. In this video, we learn how to root these Android devices using Magisk. Obviously, like we talked about before, we could just use flash.android.com and just choose to install the user debug builds instead of the user versions. However, let's see how to do it using Magisk in this video. Always the first thing that you should be doing is to run adb shell get prop and confirm the build fingerprint for your device. In my case, my device is running Android 14 and it is running the specific build release that is listed over here. The first thing that you need to do for rooting your Android device using Magisk is to gain access to your OTA file for this specific build release. To do that, all we have to do is head over to developer.google.com and go to the /android/OTA link. Here, search for the build release that is listed inside adb shell get prop. So we are going to be downloading this one. So this corresponds to this build release. All we have to do is right click on link and select copy link address. Then I'll head over to the terminal and I will do wget to download this OTA file. Depending upon your internet speed, this will take quite a bit of time. We will be back after the download is complete. Once the OTA file download is complete, we will now have to extract the boot.img file from this OTA file. The boot.img file contains the Linux kernel and the RAM disk which are essential for the device to boot. The RAM disk is responsible for setting up the system environment during the early stages of the boot process, including initializing the services and mounting partitions. This is the reason why Magisk targets modifying the boot.img file to inject its binaries and scripts directly into the boot process and effectively ensuring root access from the start of the operating system. But how do we extract the boot.img file from this OTA? To do this, we will use the utility extract Android OTA payload. This utility allows us to extract the firmware images from the OTA files. Let's go ahead and do this live. So I'll copy this link. I'll head over to my terminal and I will do git clone for this project. Then I'll cd into this project. Here you will see the requirements.txt file. Let me go ahead and install these requirements. We can do this using the command python 3.11-m pip install -r requirements.txt. This will make sure all of the dependencies are installed. Once the dependencies are installed, I will extract the firmware images by using the command python extract android ota payload.py. I'll point it to the OTA file that I just downloaded, which was oriole.zip. Follow it up with the name of the directory where you want to store all of your extracted firmware files. Let me name it extracted_payload and I'll press enter. This will start extracting all of the firmware images from the OTA files and will push it into the directory termed as extracted_payload. This will take a couple of minutes. As the extraction is in process, you will already see the boot.img file that we were talking about. Once all of the firmware files are extracted, I'll just push the boot.img file onto my Android device. I'll do this using the command adb push extracted payload /boot.img. Let me push it to /SD card. Then I will be patching this boot.img file using Magisk. For this, I have to push the Magisk binary onto my Android device. To do this, I'll head over to the Magisk GitHub repository. I'll go to the releases section. Let me copy the URL for the latest version of the APK file that we see over here. I'll go to the terminal. I'll do wget to download this APK file. Once the APK file is downloaded, I'll install it to my device using adb install -r-g-t and Magisk APK. This will install Magisk onto my device. Once Magisk is installed, let me head over to my device. Then I will select the Magisk option over here. This will launch the Magisk application on my Pixel device. Once you do that, click on the install button that you see over here. Then we have to choose the select and patch a file option that we see over here. We will be patching the boot.img that we extracted from our OTA file. So I will select the boot.img. Then I will click on let's go. This will patch the boot.img file and write it to the downloads directory. Let me go ahead and extract this patched boot.img file. I'll do this using adb pull /storage, basically the same path that you see over here. So it'll be /emulated /0/download / the exact file name that we see, and I'll click enter. Now we need to install this patched boot.img file to our device. To do this, we have to put the device into bootloader mode. We can do this using the command adb reboot bootloader. This will restart the device in bootloader mode. Once the device is in bootloader mode, if we run fastboot devices, our device should show up in this list. Now to flash the patched boot.img file, I will use the command fastboot flash boot and follow it up with a Magisk patched boot image. As you notice, the flash was successful. At this point, your device should already be in fastboot mode, so use the start button on your device to enter normal mode. Once the device restarts, we can use adb shell and we'll be dropped down to the shell instance. If I do id, we will notice that I am running adb as a normal user. Now, if all of the things that we did worked well, when I do su, I should now be dropped down to the root shell. The pound sign over here indicates that now I am in a root shell. To confirm this, I'll just use the command id. When I use the id command, now you can see uid is 0, gid is 0, and our user is now root. So this is how we go about using Magisk to root a physical Pixel device. These steps are pretty standard and should work for Android versions running from Android 12 up until Android 15. Whether you're on a bug bounty program or a mobile security assessment, having complete control of your device is absolutely necessary. Even though certain Android emulators let you access data as root over ADB, these emulators are not really rooted in the real sense. For example, if you try to launch an Android application that runs super user commands internally on the emulator, you'll notice that the application does not even load. Let me launch an emulator and show you one of these cases. I'll use the command emulator -avd, name of my AVD that I created using Android Studio. In my case, it's just literally API34 hyphen writable hyphen system, and I'll start it from cold boot, so I'll just put -no snapshot -load, and this will launch my Android emulator for me. This might take a minute or so depending upon your laptop configuration. Once the emulator launches, I can just launch the Frida loader application in here, and you will notice that the application automatically crashes when I launch it. Let me try to launch it again. Again, you will see the Frida loader application crashes. Let's take a look at adb logcat to see if we can figure out what the error messages are. I'll just clean my buffer first. Then I'll just run adb logcat in the background. And I'll launch Frida loader again. Now, if I look over the Frida logcat errors, you will see a lot of information in here. If I keep scrolling up, you will see the reasons why this application crashed. For example, over here, you will see that the application was requesting to run some command as super user, and that operation was denied by the operating system. With that in mind, in this module, we learn how to root an Android emulator AVD so that we can launch custom applications as root or be able to further customize the OS based on our needs. In our case, we'll be targeting the API34 emulator AVD image that we see over here. Once you open a simple project using Android Studio, you can just head over to Tools and Device Manager. Here you'll be able to see a list of existing AVDs. Let's say you don't have one and want to create a new AVD image. The way how to do this is head over and click the plus button over here. From this list, you can select whatever skin that you want. Let's say I'm selecting the Pixel 6 and I'll click on Next. I want to target API34, so let me just select this one and I'll click Next. For ease of access, I'll just name it as Test Device 1 and I'll click on Finish. Now you will see that this device was created. Let's actually just try to root this device that we created right now. So I'll just head over to my terminal